do not. But
Oh, can I go get some? Did you started?
it started, but
I need to go get some special orange from that truck real quick.
okay, go run and get that. So welcome everybody for watching this second installment of the Chronicles of College Bass Fishing. And so with today, we're going to talk about pre-spawn fishing. This guy right here, this is Garrett Cutler. I'm Mitch Moore. The guy that just walked out is Carter Henderson. And we'll just kind of walk you through some of the things that we do whenever we approach a lake at this time of the year. Cutler, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, so the first thing that I look for when we pull up to the lake, obviously the first thing is water clarity and water temperature. Those two things are really going to eliminate a lot of water. Pre-spawn, you got a lot of fish moving up and down the water column. So you really have to find the temperature. Even just 1 degree more could mean the difference between catching 1 bass versus catching 10 bass. So I like fishing clearer water. Now, I know several fishermen that fish a lot of dirtier water. I just like to fish the clearer stuff. But first thing that I always go through with is a red rattle trap. Now, I've caught tons of fish on this, particularly 55 to about 65 degree water, kind of cooler, and I'll put it on a medium heavy rod. I like to have it a little bit longer, 7.5 foot, so I can make these super long casts. A 6:5 to 1 gear ratio reel, and depending on what kind of structure I'm fishing around, whether it be timber or just flat sand, whatever it is, I'll adjust the poundage of my line accordingly. Around timber, I like to throw something around 20. You get hung up a lot, and if you do buckle up with the fish, you want to be able to, kind of muscle them around that timber and make sure you're not going to get them hung up and stuff like that. But that's
Yeah, and then I know you're big on a Senko.
Oh, absolutely.
In a lot of our club tournaments, you throw a Senko a lot, specifically the Bass Pro Shop Sticko.
Yeah.
I know you've got a few of them with us. Explain where you would use that.
So, as far as Senko goes, my favorite that I've found so far is the Bass Pro Sticko. It comes in a 30-pack. They're pretty cheap as far as the Senkos go, in general. They have a much, more exaggerated flop. A lot of Senkos and stick worms, they tend to just kind of stick out straight.
Too tough.
Too tough, something like that. I think it's the sand that's in them, but I'll always fish it around hard structure, whether it be rock, docks, timber, all the stuff like. It's just, I always, if there's something that I can physically see and cast at, I want to make a bunch of casts, whether it be on one side or the other side. I'll pitch to every possible corner that I can, do it multiple times. A lot of times they're not going to bite on the first bite. A lot of times it's not going to happen, but it's worked well for me in the past. There's no particular color that I favor over another. I've probably caught black and blue. I probably got most of my fish on that just because we fish dirtier water around here. Yeah, that's pretty much.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So Mitch, tell us about this crankbait right here, and
Okay.
maybe where you throw it.
So one thing that's big in a pre-spawn situation, at least for me, is a crankbait that hunts. So that's going to be like this 6 Sense. I don't even know what it's called. But it hunts really well. Something like a wigglewort, a bandit.
What do you mean by hunts?
So, well, I was getting around to it. But whenever I say hunts, instead of a bait that's gonna just track totally true, whenever it's scraping the bottom, a hunting bait is gonna stray a little bit side to side each way. And it's going to kick up a lot more dirt. It's going to be a little bit more erratic, and for some reason, that paired with a wider wobble it's great for the colder water, the fish that are trying to move up and get ready to spawn. Where it really shines is around that 55 degree mark, and of course that's in lakes that don't have a whole lot of grass. When it comes to grass, you can't beat a red trap. You really can't.
Yeah, it's good.
So Mitch, you would normally throw this shallow, but most guys might throw a square bill shallow. Why do you like this over a square bill?
Once again, it goes back to the hunting. So a square bill, most times it's going to track true, and so when you're bringing it through, I mean, it's great for rock, but when it's going to come through, it's going to just come straight in a line. You're not going to have it getting out of its way like a hunting bait does. Why they bite it so much better, I don't know, but it works. And it goes back to the whole saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And right now it works. So I don't see myself fixing it anytime soon.
Well, I think one of my favorite all-around baits, pre-spawn, post-spawn, middle of the summer, is this big shaky head right here. I'm talking 5/8 ounce, 3/4 ounce. I want something big. I'm trying to go for a bigger bite. And I normally pair it with I still stick with a straight worm. This is a Smash Tank 8.25 inch worm right here. And it's a lot softer. So that way when this thing's standing straight up, when I'm dragging it, this thing's wiggling a lot more than if it would be just like a harder plastic. That's it kind of goes both ways. You tear them up after 2 fish, but I think it's worth it. But I prefer these straight worms on the shaky head as opposed to like a curly tail or something like that. But I like throwing this pre-spawn in drains and stuff. If you have hydrilla on both sides of the creek and drain, I'll throw this heavy shaky head right in the middle of it and drag it all the way down. And so some of the really big fish that haven't really decided to go up shallow yet are going to be hanging out in those creeks. And I can make a very long 60-yard cast with this thing, and that gives me a lot of water to drag this through. That's the only bad thing is you got to fish slow.
Yeah.
If you're in the boat with this guy, he's not going to like that very much.
No, not at all. I'm definitely what you would call a power fisherman. But that right there is exactly what you were talking about last week.
Right.
And that's the bite that y'all had found at Toledo Bend, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Spot on, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it worked really well day 1. It worked day 2. We just couldn't hook them. It was frustrating, but yeah, I'm going to show you guys this package real quick. This is my favorite go-to, and then this is the shaky head that goes with it. So it'll stand straight up on the bottom like that. But you can do the Smash Tech worms, and they're kind of hard to find, so a really good substitute if you don't have those is just these big Magnum trick worms, which is
it's a Zoom. It's an 8-inch.
Yeah, it's like a regular trick worm, but it's a lot fatter.
Zoom also makes a Magnum finesse worm, and a lot of the time in the spring I'll do that with a watermelon red color, dip dye the tail, and put it on a shaky head. And the reason why I dip dye the tail is because if you look at a lot of the bluegill, their tail in the water looks chartreuse, and so it's a lot more reflective of the forage that way. I do the same thing with one thing that I have right here is a finesse jig, and here I can show that to you. This is just a Strike King Bitsy bug, and what I'll do is I'll put like a baby Z hog, sometimes even a baby brush hog as the trailer, and I'll cut it down so that I can get a little bit more compact profile. And then once again, I go back to dip dye the tail, because primarily when they're pushing up real shallow, they're there and they're going to be eating the bluegill. That at that time of the year, at least more often, they're going to stop depending so much on the shad. I mean, they're always going to eat shad. Shad's always going to be there. It's going to be available. But at this time of the year, the panfish are more available. And so representing that is that it's something that I try to do, and it seems to work out okay in my case.
Yeah, with that finesse jig, a lot of times in the winter, particularly, I got to give credit to my dad on this one. What he'll do is he'll take a trailer that just doesn't have a lot of action, just kind of flops there. You know, a lot of people want to throw, you know, a rage crawl, something that has some crazy action, which that works a lot of the time. But whenever you can't get bites and you're fishing, you know, hard structure like a dock or something, making tons of casts, I will throw something super low profile like that finesse jig and put, you know, like a jig and pig or something kind of old school. And it just kind of flops there. And a lot of times, for whatever reason, they prefer to have something that's not as, you know, just more subtle, basically. But it's caught a lot of fish. And, you know, days where you're getting, you know, 1 to 2 bites an hour on another jig with something else, a lot of times, you know, it could just be that tiny difference between your trailer being super active and flamboyant or just something real subtle that just kind of floats, something real easy for the fish to get.
Yeah.
So.
Now, so going to the jig and pig, can you get a hold of the old port trailers?
Yes.
I have.
Yeah.
I've looked around and I couldn't find them.
If you go to local tackle shops like Academy, I haven't been able to see anything on like the bigger retailers, but I think maybe Bass Pro, but particularly smaller tackle shops. They've
Oak
always
Ridge.
got some, Oak Ridge all around Lake Fork, you know, stuff like that. But you can find some good stuff.
Gotcha.
Especially
And then,
for
what
us.
would the advantage of a jig and pig be over the plastic chunks that they have out on the market?
I think it's scent, a little bit of taste here and there, and just the action. Like I said, it's just it's real soft, real. Just it doesn't have a whole lot to it. Whereas the soft plastics now they're designed to make a lot of commotion, a lot of flap. So
Yeah.
I think that's
So maybe not as much to get more bites, but when you do get the bites, they'll hang
yes,
on. And
yeah, exactly.
better hookup ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a whole lot about the jig and pig in the winter time coming into the springtime.
Yeah.
I just I haven't been able to get my hands
Yeah,
on them.
it's tough to get your hands on them sometimes. It really is.
So, and then I don't know where to. I saw that you had a jerk bait sitting over there.
Yes.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So if the water is, you know, upper 40s, mid 50s, that's like ideal for a suspending jerkbait. Clear water.
Big deal.
Yes.
Around us, it's
Yes.
pretty tough to find that, but if you can find it, and a lot of times pre-spawn, some of the fish they come up in the water column. So a lot of times, you know, you could be fishing, you know, 10 feet of water. But a jerkbait that dives 3, 4, 5 feet could be, you know, just an absolute dime for you. And I've had luck, you know, doing a fast cadence and letting it sit for almost, you know, 15, 20 seconds at a time. I mean, you can be really patient or you can cover a lot of water with it. It's a really versatile bait.
Last year at Lake Norman, for one of the college series events, me and Clark, we went out there, and what we did on the second day of the tournament, or part of what we did, and we did all through practice, the water was 43 to 44 degrees, and we would let it, we would pop it 2, 3 times, 4 times max, and then we would, no lie, sit there and count to 15.
Godly.
And, it was very, very difficult for me.
Right.
But we caught some very, very good quality spotted bass doing that. The first day we went and we hung out by one of the hot holes, which when they say hot holes, on that lake there's two power plants, and we were hanging out by one of them. We caught all our fish on a jerk bait in front of one of those. And then the second day, that wasn't working, so we ran from 60-degree water to 43-degree water. And we caught far better fish in that cold water, but we worked for them. Yeah, we did have to work for them, and we were, no lie, we were pausing it for 15 seconds.
Yeah. I know, like, when people go to throw a drop shot, Aaron Martin's prime example. When I believe he was fishing Lake Havasu, something super clear water. Downsized like crazy, but he left his bait in the water for a couple minutes. He'd throw it out there and he'd just kind of do whatever, just look around, eat a sandwich, you name it.
Yeah.
But he said, I've left a drop shot in the water for, I can't remember if it was 3, 5 minutes, whatever it was, but it was several minutes at a time. So
Yeah.
a lot of times
Brian Thrift, big on throwing a Cinco type bait. For him, it's all about the Damiki stinger. And one thing that he'll do is if he has to go in and retie, he'll take that stinger and he'll just cast it out and let it sink down and sit on the bottom while he's retying. Wow. And I think, so last year, was it St. Clair that he won? A FLW Costa event?
St. Clair, there or Grand Lake? Did he not?
No.
Grand?
Well, he might have won Grand, but it was a smallmouth, largemouth mixed lake.
Gotcha.
And at least one of the fish that he brought in, he casted that stinger out and he let it sink all the way to the bottom.
Wow.
And sure enough, he's down there retying, and that rod just starts bowing over. It's interesting. A lot of people don't think about that, and it all just kind of comes to maximizing your time too.
Yeah, right. Well, kind of going back to the jerkbait real quick, I think why most people don't throw it is I think it's like a difficult lure to throw, which it does take some learning to kind of get your cadence down and your. But I think another one is they're kind of expensive for some of the brands. The guys, the H2O Express brand jerkbait at the Academy.
Yes.
It is $7.99, and guys, it is one of the best jerkbaits I've ever thrown.
Yeah, and
I've thrown pointers, I've thrown.
It's an awesome jerkbait, and it's the one specifically is the ultimate jerk shad.
Mm-hmm. Gotta have the one with 3 hooks.
Yes, and I don't know if y'all modify it at all, but I take all the hooks off.
Yeah, you gotta replace the hooks
and
every time.
I go to I do a couple things. I take the KVD triple grips, I size up, and I put those, and it's the short shank. I size up and I put those on the front too, and I put a round bend on the back, sized up round bend on the back. That does several things. I feel like a round bend hook is better for just hooking up.
Yeah.
So if one just nips at the tail, with the round bend, I feel like I've got a better chance at getting a hook in that fish.
Yeah.
But if they nail it and they get the triple grips, they're not getting off.
Right.
Great hooks.
Yeah, fantastic hooks. And so I do that, and then also when you upsize just a little bit and go to the thicker wire, that bait actually very, very, very slowly sinks.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things at Norman was we were getting that jerk bait that was supposed to go down to 5 foot. We were hitting the bottom in 15, toward the end of the cast.
Yeah.
And so we were getting way down there. And I think that could have been something that was very, very helpful in that tournament, because those fish, we went and you couldn't really see them on the side imaging because they were sucked so close to the bottom. And if you got out on the trolling motor, which we did later in the day, and we just hunted around for them and would drop on them, and you would just barely see them up above the mud.
Mm-hmm.
So, if in that case, if they're sucked down to the bottom like they were, it was post cold front deal. Getting that bait down, it was very, very beneficial.
Yeah. What kind of rod are you throwing the jerkbait on?
6'8", medium. Yeah.
A lot of people make the mistake of using just, heavy artillery when it comes to a jerkbait. You want a shorter rod. You're sitting there doing a lot of pops, and you want a lot of give in that rod. I mean, a lot of these fish are barely grabbing this bait. So if you've got a really heavy rod,
if they're even grabbing
it,
sometimes you hook them on the outside of the mouth.
Yeah.
If you got a heavy rod with heavy line, you're gonna rip it out like 99% of the time. Now, a couple times, you're gonna hook them, but you want that medium rod. I like to use 8 to 10 pound. It depends on, obviously, the cover that I'm fishing around. If I'm around timber, I'll bump it up 12, 14, but that's the way extreme. But if I'm fishing open water, I like to go as light as I possibly can, because one, it gives jerkbait just a little bit better action when you downsize the line. The knot's just a little bit smaller, and if you've got fluorocarbon on it, kind of bring that bait down. And a lot of people, make the mistake of throwing monofilament when they're wanting to have that jerkbait, get down to this depth.
Right.
That mono's going to sit there, it's going to pull it up the whole time. So fluorocarbon for me has worked very well with that.
Yeah, I throw fluorocarbon. Most of the time it's 10 pound. Keep it light, keep it simple. And then Carter, you got anything else? What about scent in the pre-spawn?
So I think for attracting more fish, it's not going to be as big of a deal. But definitely, if you throw this on your jig or you throw it on your worm or something, and you get a bite, they're going to hang on a lot longer. And if you tend to daydream or you look around and you miss that one bite and you haven't been bitten an hour, which happens to me all the time. Hopefully they'll hang on a little bit longer and you'll have time to react and set the hook. I know I'm not the only one that this happens to.
No,
It's like you can go an hour without a bite, and then you reach down to get a snack or something. And that's when you get your bite.
Yeah, I know. In my case, I use scent religiously when it comes to pre-spawn, and then once it's spawn time, 100% of the time. I don't know. I think it may help with getting one or two more bites within the day, but at the end of it, one or two more bites can be huge. That can be the tournament. And so, especially when you're out fishing slower, any extra incentive for that fish to bite and then hold on for a really long time, it's tremendous.
Yeah, if it's not like a staining or whatever kind of liquid it is, as long as it doesn't put a mark on that bait. A lot of times I'll just soak. As soon as I buy a bag of worms, I'll spray whatever scent, if it's bass scent or shad scent, whatever. They make all kind of stuff, garlic. Before I even use it, days before, I'll sit there and I'll spray some oil in there, zip it up, and when I go to use it on the lake, it's pungent. It's there.
No,
you can take a
you
bait that
definitely know it's
smells like straight plastic, and it will smell more so like the real thing. And a lot of times I feel like that helps. For sure.
Nice. What you got?
Man, I think that's about all I got for this week.
Do you change out your hooks on crankbaits?
Every time.
Every time.
I do not change out Strike King or Sixth Sense.
Okay.
I leave those. I haven't had any break on me, but most jerkbaits, most smaller crankbaits like bombers or bandits, I'll change those out because. Well, I was gonna say because you hook one fish, you got to use the pliers to get it out. You've weakened that hook so much when you bend it back that whenever you hook that fish, it might only have one barb, it'll just break off. So it takes a little bit of time to replace the hooks, but I think it's definitely worth it, even during a tournament, as opposed to losing a winning fish.
Another thing I just saw, Andy Montgomery in particular just posted about how he stores all his crankbaits. Literally anything that deals with a treble hook, he takes them completely off. When you go and you get a split ring plier and you go to put a hook on the bait, if you know what you're doing, it takes 5-10 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
It really doesn't take that long.
If you've got the tools.
Have you seen Kevin Van Dam do it?
He's
He
a
does
wizard
it with his fingernail, and it doesn't. No time.
Crazy. But Andy, he has bags and bags and bags of all these baits, and he never has to worry. He's like, I promise you I'll spend less amount of time putting a new hook on a bait rather than sitting there untangling everything from the box. If you got your crankbait box, depending on which one you have, you're sitting there, you're jostling around forever and ever and ever. Just when it comes back to maximizing your time on the water, it's one of those things.
And then one thing that I'll do, which this kind of goes into tackle storage and helping prevent rust, in all like the beef jerky cases, most packages that you get, they've got those silicone, those little silicone packets, and you take those and you keep them and you put them in all your terminal boxes, your crankbait boxes, anything that could rust, and it helps keep that down. Big time. So for those of you that didn't know that. I hope that helps. I hope that helps you out. It's helped me out a lot, and it's a very cheap fix.
Well, I
It's
think,
just an
like,
everyday item.
One of the biggest mistakes people make is they change their crankbaits. Well, they'll put that wet one back in the
Mhm.
box,
Yeah.
and then it'll start to evaporate, but the water stays in the box, and then it gets to all your other lures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and
That's a big thing.
big no-no.
Another small thing that I've noticed is when you're dealing with a plastic that's got a lot of salt in there. You know, say you're fishing a spot and you haven't got a lot of bites for a while, you switch baits, or you're getting a lot of bites, you need to change over, whatever,
Mhm.
whatever. I'm particularly bad about this. I don't know about anyone else. I will cut the hook off with the worm still on there, crawl, whatever it be, and just throw it in the bottom of the boat, clean it up later. But that salt and that bait, you don't understand how fast it can actually ruin a hook. And I'm
Yeah.
not talking like within the day, but I had a jig particularly, was fishing Lake Fork, hadn't got a bite all day, finally got thumped on that jig. I went to set the hook and I felt it for a second and it just came off. I'm like, okay, well I just missed it, dang. Come up and the entire bend of the hook was gone. You could see the spot where it had rusted off that plastic. So it's another
Crazy.
thing. Yeah.
Really crazy.
Yep.
I
You just don't think about it,
Yeah.
but that salt in there, it'll do you dirty.
Sneak up on
Yeah.
you. Huh?
Anybody got any questions for him?
Just tips and tricks.
Yeah, I guess. Just a little tips and tricks. Let's see, we've
You got any comments?
so, Corbin asked, do we use a hydrowave?
I don't have one on my boat, and I've heard mixed opinions about it. Now, if you're on like a shad spawn pattern, I truly believe if you throw a hydrowave on there, it will keep that. You know, a lot of times when you're fishing shad spawn, you know, it's hot and heavy, and then all of a sudden it just dies off. It's
Right.
gone. That hydrowave, I really do believe it will keep those shad active for just a little bit longer, and it'll give you a couple more bites when a lot of people, their bite had already gone. So.
Nice. I have a hydrowave on my boat, but the speaker is broken.
Ah.
So currently, I am not using a hydrowave, but it's one of those things that it's not gonna hurt you. At least not to my knowledge, it's not gonna hurt you. It can only help you. Sometimes I've never had it be a night or day deal, but I know of people who have. Josh Bensema, somebody on here who's looking, who's watching, he swears by it.
Right. Well, and I've been in one boat that has a hydrowave, and it was Mr. Corbin Davis.
Yep.
We had a club tournament on Lake Somerville, and water had gotten into his screen on the hydrowave, so he couldn't really change the settings or volume or anything, but it was stuck on crawfish, which ended up being perfect because we were throwing jigs that day on some deeper rock and some shallow cane and stuff like that, and we ended up having 22 pounds. And I'm not saying that was the game changer, but it definitely didn't hurt.
I'll tell you a time when I really did wish I had one. I was fishing Lake Fork, dead of the summer, it's hot, so I always go to the bridges. I'll throw a drop shot around the bridges, but there's all kinds of smaller bass that will come up and start schooling chasing that shad.
Right.
I've never had a hydrowave, but I can almost guarantee you if I had one, I would have caught, at least a couple more fish. I did notice, it's totally random. I'm fishing those pillars, and, they start busting behind me, wherever it be, 40, 50 yards, whatever. I always have top water tied on, something real heavy like a spoon. I could bomb it if I needed to. But as soon as we would turn away from where those fish were, I felt like they felt the vibration from that trolling motor. Because the second we start going away, they start busting like right where we just were.
Hmm.
So I feel like if I had a hydrowave, I could have got something
Yeah.
out of it. But
I know a lot of people, they say that the hydrowave actually is best about masking the sound of the trolling motor. If it doesn't do anything else, masking the sound of the trolling motor can be a help.
Right. Especially in still, calm water, if there's no wind or anything like that, it's definitely important to kind of reduce your noise.
Yeah. Okay, so we got one thing. Andrew Lonakaitis is asking, what is your favorite color Cinco? For me, I like the orange one. I don't know which color it is. I know it's orange.
the orange.
Yeah.
I like the green pumpkin, and I dip the tail. For sure, that's my favorite.
I'm probably a black and blue. Black with blue flag, because, I mean, it doesn't matter what color the water is, it seems to catch fish. Now, if I'm fishing Lake Travis, where I can see 20 feet, might throw something like a watermelon red, green pumpkin, something like that.
Mhm.
But if it's got any dinge to it at all, I'm throwing black and blue, and I've had a lot of success like that.
All right. And something that you brought up earlier, you were talking about fishing a bridge.
Yes.
Please explain. I know you fish bridges a whole lot. Please explain to the people who are watching.
Yeah.
What your thought process is on a bridge. What makes bridges so good? Because so many people out there, they fish bridges. They do really well. Cody Meyer
Oh yeah.
done super well on bridges.
Yeah. So what it really boils down to is time of the year. So a lot of times you see these bridges way back in a creek, and it basically just provides a pinch point. That's, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, fish will be going through that little corridor, whether it be a creek or a river, whatever it is, and they're going to go back in these creeks for the spawn. They're going to be pushing back there, and vice versa. They'll be coming right back out. So that little pinch where there's a road on either side. I mean, it is. I mean, there's going to be fish coming in and out of that all the time. Now in the summertime, it offers a little bit of shade. Any bit of shade in the summertime is always a big deal, but particularly in the spawn, there's just a whole lot of movement.
It's the Bass Highway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's literally
is.
like a highway for fish.
Yeah.
There's always fish.
Well, and one of our old ag anglers, Tyler Anderson, actually just did a video all about bridge fishing. If you guys want to check that out on his YouTube channel.
Definitely. I know I saw he was on,
Mm-hmm.
let's see, Corbin said the juice.
The juice.
The juice. He says the bridge is the juice. And then
Oh,
Jared
the-
Anderson says that the black and blue is the way to go.
There you have it. Tried and true.
Alright, now, Carter, tell us a little bit about creek channels. Where are some of the best places for you to look for these fish to maybe group up a little bit better on their way going back?
So you kind of want to. I think the biggest problem is when people fish tournaments, they try to cover too much water instead of really breaking down one area and finding the fish in that area.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is pick one large creek, that's pretty long, a couple miles long, and then I like to find a couple of side cuts that have creeks running through it. And so I'll go down those, and I start at the mouth and then work my way back, staying on the creek channel. And that way I know that, okay, I got 3 bites at the mouth, I got 1 bite at the back. Okay, so these fish are a little bit more pre-spawn than mid-spawn. So I need to focus more on the mouths of creeks. And once you find 2 or 3 of these spots, you can run that pattern on the rest of the lake without having to practice on it. Which I think is a really huge deal, especially on a 3-4 day tournament when you're running out of water, running out of fish. So that's kind of what I like to do. And whenever these creeks do 90-degree right turns, 90-degree left turns, just right when they bend, and there's timber around it, or there's something around it, there's hydrilla around it, it's a really good ambush spot for these bass, and they're going to be hanging out there.
And how deep? And I guess explain depth in relation to water clarity as well as water temperature.
So for this past tournament at Toledo, it seemed like the water would get much more clear the further back that we went, which actually, the further back we went this time of year, we didn't get as many bites. But the mouth of the creeks that we were focusing on, in the middle of the creek was about 20, 22 feet, and then on each edge of it, it went up to about 15. So what we would do is we would cast over the creek onto the bank. This is all underwater, you kind of have to picture it in your head. You would drag it off of the flat and then down into the creek, and that's when we would get our bites.
Mm-hmm.
These fish are, 2-3 feet down in that creek, waiting for stuff to come over to eat, and so that's good hiding spot, good ambush spot, and I think this time of year the mouths and the deeper water is definitely more important, regardless of water clarity, I think. But as the water gets more clear, you can definitely start working your way back more, I think.
Yeah.
Depending on water temp also, but
so this is more of a general thing, but I know Brent Ayler, what he says whenever he approaches a new body of water, which it doesn't always ring true, but in the majority of cases, it does. If it's 3 foot water clarity, he's not going to typically fish shallower than 3 foot. And if it's 15 foot, he's not going to fish shallower than 15 foot initially.
Right.
And I mean, obviously, you've got to feel things out a little bit, but he likes to follow that line where the sun can't penetrate as well, because you could. I mean, his theory is that the fish use it as an ambush point. Do you have any thoughts on that mentality?
Well, the first thing that comes to my head is, say you get on a muddy lake. I mean, what do you do then? There's been several times where you drop a bait down and it disappears like that. Now, I like to fish, the clear water of the body of water that I'm on. If you run up north, which particularly most of the time north obviously is going to have the muddier water, I can't seem to get the bites. I don't know if it's a confidence thing, if I'm psyching myself out, that's another thing. Having confidence in an area is everything.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But I guess I'd kind of follow along like Erler does. I mean, if it's 4 or 5 foot visibility, which for us that's pretty darn good.
That is. That's
here.
really good. If you're not at Stillhouse or Belton
But
or Travis,
I think what it comes down to most of the time is not necessarily I won't fish deeper than the water clarity. Is I'll just go to a different color. Certain colors on the spectrum when it's further down appear, darker, whatever. Some of them disappear. I don't know the exact science behind it. I think red shows up.
So it's not it's mostly about like clarity instead of color.
Yeah.
So like the more opaque your lure is, the better it's going to be able to be seen in
Sure.
the muddy water. And then
Opaque.
we want like a more
Bigger.
translucent color for
Yeah.
the clear. I mean, like at Lake Travis, when you throw a spook, you're not going to throw a black spook. You're not going to throw a solid multicolored spook. You're going to throw that clear spook. You're going to throw that bone colored spook.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
But that's top waters are for a different episode. We'll get into those.
Yeah. So the last thing that we'll cover tonight is you talked about how whenever you come into a creek, you like to find 1 or 2 offshoots
Mm-hmm.
and break them down so that you can run it around for the duration of a tournament.
Right.
I guess how do you look at a map and go, okay, this is going to have them, this is going to have them, and then I know a lot of things that people wonder is how do these kids run around and fish in these college tournaments and last over the course of these 3 days just running around a lake? How do they have all these spots? And the truth of that is, most of the time we don't.
We don't know.
we do. We look at a map and we decipher it. Maybe one of these days coming up, we'll have to have a map breakdown.
Right. And talking about maps and stuff, our last tournament, Toledo Bend, we all stayed in a big house. 16 guys in one house. There's actually a map on the wall of Toledo Bend, and every single night we would gather around there and stand there and just point at stuff.
Yeah. No,
So-
we would. We did
But
that.
talking about finding other spots based on what I've fished. So I'm going to look at those contour lines, and I'm going to look at the timber around, or structure around, and just kind of water clarity also. So whenever I'm looking on the map, I can find contours that look the same, and in practice, I can drive the boat there and look at it. Well, if it has the same contours but there's no grass or no timber, I'm going to mark that one off. If I'm really on this bite, then I want to find something that's exactly the same. And most of the time, after 3 days of practice, you can find 6 to 7 of these cuts of these spots, and then tournament day, hopefully you only need 2 or 3.
There's a reason fish are where they are. I mean, they live off of instinct. I mean, it's just natural instinct. If you get a bite, there's a reason you got a bite. There's a reason there's a fish down there. So if you can find something similar, or something that relatively mimics that in a way, you have a better chance than scrapping your whole idea and trying to find a whole new pattern. I mean, there is a reason that fish bit. There's a reason it's sitting there, and you just got to figure out what the exact reason is and why it's there.
Right. Well, with that, I think we're we're gonna call it a night. Thank you everybody for watching, and gig 'em.
See you next week.
All right.
Julio.
Yeah. That's number 2.
Sweet. It's still rolling.
Yeah, I know it is. We're